Tonight, we begin with a development that U.S. officials, intelligence insiders, and foreign policy analysts had feared, tracked, and quietly prepared for, a development that unfolded not over years, but in hours. Hours that shifted global threat assessments, hours that triggered emergency consultations, hours that raised a question few want to ask out loud. What Vladimir Putin did today crossed a line that Western intelligence agencies had hoped would hold. And when that line broke, Washington did not hesitate. They responded with speed, precision, and silence. For months now, there had been signals, not from official press briefings, not from formal diplomatic channels, just signals that the Kremlin was preparing something unusual. Putin has been calculating, yes, but he has also been methodical in that calculation. His moves have followed a certain rhythm, a cadence, almost a ritual. But what set off alarm bells in Washington and Brussels this week was that the rhythm went silent. Experts who monitor Russian strategic behavior know the indicators: the absence of routine travel, the suspension of predictable communications, the sudden halt in public-facing military signaling, the disappearance of familiar intermediaries. All of it went quiet. And whenever the Kremlin goes quiet, it means something is about to get loud. Early this morning, Western intelligence monitoring systems detected what they described as anomalous strategic movement, including security reconfigurations that had not been activated in over a decade. These are the kinds of moves Russia only deploys when they are signaling something very specific: deterrence, escalation, or survival. Observers didn't know which category this fell into, or whether it fell into all three at once. But what they did know was that Moscow was changing posture. And when a nuclear-armed state shifts posture without explanation, even slightly, every intelligence service on Earth pays attention. The warning issued by U.S. intelligence channels tonight was not normal. It was not routine. It was not symbolic. It was urgent. Source after closed-door briefing described the Kremlin's move as destabilizing, unpredictable, and most importantly, indicative of internal vulnerability. But deterrence only works if the target hesitates. Washington did not. In fact, today's response was among the most coordinated intelligence maneuvers we've seen in years. Within hours of the trigger event, U.S. agencies activated special counter-contingency frameworks. These weren't the ordinary systems. These were extraordinary intelligence and covert response mechanisms, tools only activated when leadership-level threats are being assessed. Tonight, senior sources confirmed that U.S. intelligence initiated preemptive containment actions across multiple theaters. They moved before Moscow could counter. They disrupted communication nodes. They targeted logistical intermediaries. They neutralized support pathways that could enable destabilizing outcomes. In other words, they targeted infrastructure, not ideology. The components that would make escalation operational. This is what made tonight's warning so urgent, because Putin's move wasn't symbolic. It was actionable. It represented the kind of shift that could trigger cascading instability if left unchecked. And Washington, understanding that fully, responded with force, not recklessly, not impulsively, but strategically. They didn't strike leadership. They didn't provoke overt confrontation. They hit capabilities, not people. Here's where the story becomes even more intense. Analysts now believe the Kremlin's latest move was designed to test the resolve of Western intelligence agencies after months of perceived hesitation. Putin wanted to see whether the West would blink. Instead, the opposite happened. Washington didn't hesitate. They moved with a level of coordination and confidence that Moscow could not ignore. You don't get the Kremlin's attention easily, but today, Washington did. Senior analysts speaking anonymously described the shift as a signal event, a moment meant to redefine red lines. But tonight proved something critical. The U.S. intelligence apparatus remains active, adaptive, and unwilling to be cornered. Their actions weren't just strong, they were precise, and precision matters. It shows intent, it shows capability, and it shows that Washington is not reacting. They are shaping outcomes. As reports continued coming in throughout the day, the scale of the response became clearer. Cyber units disrupted foreign coordination channels. Intelligence assets monitored previously dormant intermediaries. Strategic partners increased surveillance near sensitive nodes. This wasn't defensive signaling. This wasn't diplomatic theater. This was strategic containment. This was preemptive positioning. And positioning is something Moscow has struggled to maintain since early in the conflict. For every move the Kremlin makes, Washington now counters faster and quieter. Remember, Moscow believes several things: that the West was divided, that intelligence fatigue had set in, that escalation risks would deter response. Tonight, all of those assumptions collapsed. The West is coordinated, the intelligence networks are alert, and escalation no longer guarantees leverage. What makes this moment so dangerous and so volatile is that this move comes at a time when Putin is under extraordinary internal pressure. Hardliners want escalation, elites want stability, security services want certainty, the public wants normalcy. Balancing those forces while managing an external confrontation is not strength, it's strain. And leaders under strain make unpredictable moves. Tonight's U.S. intelligence warning, circulated through allied channels, was designed to signal one thing: Washington will not allow destabilization at the leadership level. Officials described Moscow's behavior as inconsistent with strategic stability. That is intelligence language for this is dangerous and we are watching. You don't hear that tone unless something serious is at stake. Meanwhile, senior U.S. leadership addressed internal audiences in a measured, firm briefing. The message was clear: escalation will be met. Instability will be contained. No actor is untouchable. These are not rhetorical statements. They are strategic signals. What makes this more concerning is that Moscow's move wasn't isolated. Alongside it, proxy actors increased activity. Information operations intensified. Strategic messaging hardened, all within the same window. When multiple pieces move at once, something larger is underway. Analysts are now considering three scenarios. 1, Moscow is preparing a dramatic escalation. 2, Moscow is attempting to force negotiations through fear. 3, the most worrying, Moscow is reacting to perceived internal threat. But today, Washington removed one option from the table. They didn't delay. They didn't de-escalate prematurely. They didn't ignore warning signs. They acted. What we're witnessing now is a test of resolve. Moscow wants to see how far it can push. Washington wants to show limits exist. Allies want stability, and everyone wants to avoid the unthinkable. Tonight, sources confirm monitoring remains elevated. They say internal Kremlin security has tightened. They say decision-making circles have narrowed. And they say this moment is part of a broader recalibration. But Washington is not backing down. Their response today, quiet, deliberate, and decisive, sent a message to Moscow: escalation will not go unanswered. To allies, deterrence still works. As the hours unfold, more details will emerge about what Moscow intended. But what we know now is this: the response was timely. It reduced risk. It reasserted boundaries. What happens next depends on Moscow's next move. If restraint follows, tonight will be remembered as a turning point. If escalation F follows, Washington has already shown it is ready. And tonight, for the first time in months, Moscow is quiet, too quiet. And when the Kremlin goes quiet, it means calculations are underway. Because tonight, a lesson was reinforced. Power has limits. Silence is not safety. And escalation cuts both ways. This story is far from over. But tonight, one thing is clear. The world is watching. The stakes are rising. And the next move will matter more than all the ones before it. We'll be here, watching every detail as the next phase unfolds.